that are called upon by the various people to expound on black history and the black church. And I'm listening to this and I'm going, how can you talk about the black church without talking about the people that are associated with it from its origin? How can we talk about the genius that resides in the black man and the black church and their resilience without going back and connecting ourselves to who we are, who we've come from? Yes, it's a long gap from Abraham to me. But the Most High speaks to Israel and he says to them, he says, these are the things that are going to apply to you from generation to generation to generation. So I'm a different generation, but my roots go back to the origin of the creation of man. How can you talk about black history without recognizing that the person of color was the first man created? Hello? And how can you talk about this subject without talking about the people who are the forerunners of who we are? How can you talk about black history and the genius that is created and has gone on that we have contributed to society without understanding the foundation and the roots from which that comes? I said I wasn't going to get up. I'm getting ready to get up. The issue on the table, and I'm going to get to the Mitzvos, but I wanted to take some time to share this with people. The Most High created man in an image that is worthy of himself. Adam was a person of color. The Most High created a man, and the question on the table is this: why would the Most High create a man with inferior capabilities when he himself is superior? Why would he do that? And while the narrative has gone to the point that wants to talk about the black man being 1/4 of a man, congregation, please excuse me, but I got to say it this way. If we are 1/4 of a man, we are one hell of a 1/4 of a man. And that's because the genius of creation in Adam was given everything that the Most High created. After he created it, he placed Adam in a place and said, now I'm giving this to you to have dominion and authority over it. And I want you to name all of the things, all of the animals that I have created. Adam names them. Not only does he name them, but he separates them in the categories of that which is clean and unclean. Most High says you've done well. That, my sisters and brothers, as one of my other Kohanim so profoundly provided you with in a statement that says, Hebrew people are not stupid. We are not a stupid people. So when we are going to celebrate who we are, and every year we celebrate it without going back to the foundation of the root of who we are, to understand where does this genius creativeness come from, it comes from the fact that our Father created us with a brain. Oh, we're very smart people. Not only are we smart, we're very resilient. We have the ability to bring into existence something that was never there before. Where does that come from? That comes from the Most High. So my point is, and I'm going to try to be brief, I talk about this more in the podcast. You can go to the podcast and you can see this narrative, but I wanted to bring something up because I want you to be awakened to the fact of who you are. I know that the Hebrew Israelites are not the only people that have this sense of creativity. We look at the sons of Noach, and we look at Ham, we look at Mitzrayim, we look at the Egyptians, we look at how creative they are as a people. We look at Shem and all the people that come out of Shem, which are Shemites, which doesn't make me a anti-Semitic. I am very Semitic. I'm just Semitic in terms of I'm Semitic within the framework of Scripture, because Scripture defines the Shemites within the lineage of Shem. So we come out of Shem, and we have this genius within us. And this genius within us is the ability to create and bring things into existence that just boggle our minds. I think this year I've paid more attention to black history than I ever have in the history of my life. Down to the simplest things of understanding that the things that we take for granted. I'm going to give you a couple, then I'm going to be through with this subject. It was amazing to me to realize that it was a woman of color in the state of New York who is the originator of home security. She is the individual who brought into existence the first ability to put a camera in the door to be a security matter for her home, and she is the one that spawns this whole idea that ADT and all these other alarm companies have picked up on and promoted and taken to another level. It was amazing to me to realize that in the age of computers, the superconductor ability for fast speed communications via the computer is the work of a gentleman that comes out of Nigeria, a black man who put these fast conductors together to prove that a computer could work at lightning speed. So we look at these things and we don't know. And we don't know because the Japhet, the youngest son of Noach, has stolen and is a thief of everything that his brother has contributed to society to make you think that he is the contributor or the generator of it when he's not. Let me take you to another couple places that are very germane to life. While this nation treats the minority as if he is inferior, go back and ask him a question. Because if it wasn't for the genius of a black man, there would be more people in the grave by virtue of not being able to get an open heart surgery when they needed it. That's not the creation of Eurocentrics. That's the creation of a black man whose originality is part of slavery, and his forefathers are part of slavery. He was a plumber Without his creative ability, there would be no open heart surgery. Let's think about something else. How about, how many times do you think we use in society the aspect of a blood transfusion? This 1/4 of a man that you say is 1/4 of a man is the progenitor or the originator of these life-saving tools. I want us as a people to rise up, and I want us to take our rightful position of thought, to realize that there is a genius within us because the Most High created us first, and out of us come all the other nations of people. Once again, please excuse me, but we're one hell of a 1/4 of a man. And I want us to understand something, that we need to celebrate our forefathers. We need to celebrate Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. We need to celebrate the men who have made Israel the strength of what it is. To say to you, Abraham was strategic. King David is strategic. And I recognize that for the Eurocentrics, if you go try to pull up a picture of King David, he ain't going to be brown skinned. If you go pull up a picture try to find a picture of Moshe or the prophets, none of them are going to be brown skinned. They have colored the narrative to fit their insecurities. And I'm saying to you this, and I'm going to be through with it after this. If your young people and your children don't recognize who they are, they'll never grow up to know that they have the power and the genius to be more than what they are. If we're going to celebrate Black history, then let's celebrate it all the way out to its extremity and realize that our genius comes from the one who made us. He wasn't inferior, and neither are you. All right. Now, had to get that off my chest. We have it in the podcast. I wanted to put it into a narrative where it can resonate with those. All right. A couple of weeks ago, I opened with a foundation that deals with the 613 mitzvot. The 613 mitzvot are connected to the human individual by virtue of the fact that we are comprised of 245 body parts, 365 sinews that keep us together, making up 613, which tells me that what the Most High has given us in terms of mitzvos is also connected to us as a people, humanity. He gives us the ability to breathe, gives us the ability to function, have mobility, and all of that mobility is connected to what he has created. He doesn't create us and put us in the world without giving us a manual of instruction. I remember when when VCRs came out. How many remember when VCRs came out? You went and bought a VCR, right? Took it out the box, tried to hook it up without reading the instructions, and made a mess of it. So finally you had to open up the instructions and see what connected to what, to what, to what, to what, in order to get it to work. It wasn't just plug and play. Well, if you have to have a manual to do things physically in this world, do you think that the all-wise, all-sufficient creator of man, would create man, put him in, I'm going to get up again. I'm trying to, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Do you think that the Most High, in his wisdom of who he is, would create a man, put him in the vast, absolute creation that he has created? Okay? Super. There is no creation. There is no creation. There is not another creation anywhere that measures up to what the Most High has created when he created the world, the universe, and all that's in it. Nothing. Nothing measures to it. So do you think that he would create a man, put him in this environment, and not give him the tools to be able to function in it? Hello? Hello. Do you think he would do that? No, he wouldn't do that. So he's given us instructions. These instructions that he's given us, those other people that are not us, who are called Eurocentrics from the loins of Yethat, have come and given us a narrative to tell us that the instructions that the Most High gave us to live by have been done away with. Hello? Hello? And that all of this stuff that I'm getting ready to share with you over these next few weeks is under the law, done away with. That another individual who cannot be the absolute all-sufficient one has come and nullified it and done away with it through his arrival. Got to get up now. Got to get up. How much sense does that make? So what you're trying to tell me is that man is smarter than the absolute all-sufficient one, Yah. Now I want you to listen to his narrative. When you read the narrative of the man who's replacing the absolute all-sufficient one, he says, I know it has been said, but I say. Then he comes along and says to me, can a servant be greater than his master? Well, you're putting yourself out to be greater by saying that whatever he said, I'm saying something different to you. But that's not the Most High talking. That's the narrative of another individual. Oh, I got to tell you something. I'm going to get there. I'm going to get there. In 316 AD, there was a group of people called the Arians, and it was after an individual by the name of Arius. And Arius had this discussion because there was this discussion about the triuneness of the Most High. And while the argument is going on about this man, 316 AD, this is not new, so this argument about this man being God is not a new debate. It's been going on for centuries. He says that if Jesus is God, then he is made of a different substance than God. And he said, I refute the narrative because this man doesn't have the same divine substance as God. Hello? Not a new narrative. So now we get to dealing with this subject of mitzvos and commandments. If you're listening to me today, your pastors, your teachers are not going to teach you this. They're not even going to tell you this. But if you are an African American Hebrew in this land in exile out of the continent of Africa from where Israel's home is, you need to know what I'm getting ready to talk about. I'm going to go to start with chapter 12 of Exodus. It's a good place for me to start because we happen to be in the season of what, class? Say it loud. We're in the season of what? Pesach, or Passover, which to the exiled Hebrew Israelites who are Greek will be celebrating Easter with honey baked ham. Is going to have a line out the door because we cannot have Easter without ham. And ham is an abomination to the Most High. Oh, by the way, your Eurocentric Christians who have given you this narrative, they are going to have, from which that you and I have garnered this idea, that ham is the staple for the season. And I'm going to tell you this, that's okay. Hear what I'm saying? That's okay. Because the narrative that I'm going to share with you is not a narrative for the nations. It's a narrative that has been given to Israel. It's for Israel. And if you want to join with us, that's fine. If you want to accept the narrative, that's fine. If you don't want to accept the narrative, I just got through sharing an old commercial with some of the people here in the house. And I asked them if you remember the old oil commercial, the Fram commercial. If you're old enough to remember that commercial. That commercial went like this. The Fram filter came up, and the narrative says, you can pay me now, or you can pay me later. But you are going to pay me. And the Most High says, you can get on board now, or you can get on board later, but you are going to get on board, and you're going to be faced with the truth that I'm sharing with you today. Exodus, Shemot chapter 12. Yahweh spoke to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Mitzrayim. He said, you are to begin your calendar with this month. It will be the first month of the year for you. So now we all know that there's a difference between the Gregorian calendar and the Hebrew calendar. So there's a time frame that the Most High has established for Israel to do what it needs to do. So let me share something with you here. This happens to be Mitzvot number 4 of 613. The Mitzvot is designed to sanctify the Rosh Chodesh, or the sighting of the new moon, because the new moon for Israel is the basis of how we establish our time frames and our months. The lunar calendar is the calendar that the Most High has established for our ability to keep up with what he defines as important. And what he defines as important are the days or the feasts or the festivals that he's outlined for us in Leviticus chapter number 23. So if you want to know what those are, you got to go read them in Leviticus chapter number 23. He outlines all of the important days, and all of those important days are based upon the lunar calendar. This mitzvah is directed to establishing the Hebrew calendar. It establishes by virtue of time the other designated time. So it is connected to establishing the sighting of the new moon, which operates on the lunar cycle of 364 days. So now there's two cycles. There's a lunar cycle, which is 364 days, and there's a solar cycle, which is 365 days. But the Most High functions on the solar. Our Hebrew calendar is based on the cycle of the moon. When the moon completes its revelation on the earth to begin the new revolution is known as the mold in the Hebrew, meaning the birth of the moon. There are two cycles. The lunar cycle, it's approximately 29 and a half days, which gives us 364-day lunar year. There's a solar year, which contains approximately 365 days. The lunar day or year has to do with exacting the days of the feast of Yahweh, because they are designated by the position of the moon during a specific time of the month from which we count days in reference to the festivals. So the solar cycle has to do with the sun and the magnetic fields. So now what we do in light of what he's indicating here as just being the first beginning our calendar, he gives us a time that we go out, our position, and there is a mitzvah. I need a seatbelt today. There is a mitzvah that requires us to celebrate the arrival of the new moon or new month, which is called Rosh Chodesh. This new moon, what it does is it appears in the western sky. In Israel, in the days of old, it was the responsibility of certain individuals who were assigned to watch for the new moon in the horizon of the western sky. Now remember that the mitzvah is a mitzvah that is called to sanctify Rosh Chodesh, or the new moon, here, number 4. So the idea of sanctifying is that the Most High did not leave the sighting of the new moon just to anybody. It had to be sanctified. In other words, it had to be validated by 2 witnesses that the new moon arose in the sky. They saw it, and by seeing it, they bring the news back to the Kohanim, and they sanctify the fact that the new calendar that the moon has been sighted, and the new calendar begins. Now, that's how the Most High functions. The Most High doesn't function with a time frame that travels. His times are specific. So every year, I don't care where you are, every year there is a beginning. So let's read on. Speak to all the assembly of Israel, and on the 10th day of this month, which is the month of Nisan, each man is to take a lamb or a kid for his family, 1 per household, except that if the household is too small for a whole lamb or kid, then he and his next door neighbor should share one, dividing it in proportion to the number of people eating it. Your animal must be without defect, a male in his first year, and you are to choose it from either the sheep or the goats. Now, let's listen to what's going on here. And I want you, as I talk about this in chapter 12 is all about the first exodus that Israel participated in leaving Mitzrayim. This narrative, in some respects, is going to change in Davarim. But let's look at what it is right now. This whole context here is all about celebrating what is called the Passover offering. It's an offering that's offered to the Most High. This lamb and this kid that the Most High is asking us to do is sacred meat. And only the meat of this particular process has the posturing of being holy and offered as an element to the Most High. So I got to get up again. I'm sorry. There's an old song we sing in church. You know what it was, don't you? Come on, help me out. Help me out. Y'all ain't that old. What does it say? Sit down, servant. Can't sit down. Sit down, servant. Well, I can't sit down. So here's what the deal is. You notice the text said if your neighbor wants to share, there comes a time in Israel, Most High, when we go to Davarim chapter 16, verses 1 through 10, it's going to read like this. Observe the month of Aviv and keep Pesach to Yahweh Eloheka. For in the month of Aviv, Yahweh brought you out of Mitzrayim at night. You are to sacrifice the Pesach offering from the flock and the herd to Yahweh Eloheka in the place where Yahweh will choose to have his name. Now, there is specificity there. And over the years, one of the things that I've come to reconcile myself with is that I need to stop trying to spiritualize Yah's word. I argued this position many times, that I know that those of you that have been to First Tabernacle Fellowship, you recognize and know that the Most High meets us in this house. And if you say he didn't, oh well. But you know that when you came through those doors, the presence of the Most High was vivid in the house where we gathered. So I tried to argue that his name was here, and his name is here. But the text is specific to a place. And the place now, not the Exodus. The Exodus is an altogether different trip. But today in our exile, this particular mitzvah is to be fulfilled in the place where the Most High has placed his name. Hello, Israel. Where do you think that might be? Jerusalem. But there's no temple. And there's no kohenim. There's no king. So guess what? In our exile, we can't fulfill the slaughtering of the Pesach or the Passover offering and be able to present it to him as Scripture has defined. Can't do it. Now, did the Most High know that we weren't going to be able to do it? Absolutely. Which comes to another question, okay? And that is the argument between grace and mercy. You told me that the arrival of the man that called himself God manifested in the flesh did away with the issue. So the matter is one in which that the Most High has defined for us time, place to do something. We can't slaughter a lamb. Matter of fact, anybody in here got a lamb farm? Anybody raising lambs in here? We didn't used to have a brother that did, but we don't. So the process of doing this now places us in this place of grace. So the Most High says for us to do something, but we can't do it. So what has he done for us? And I want to explain to you the idea of grace. Grace has nothing to do with so-called Jesus Christ. Grace has to do with the fact that the Most High gave us commandments, exiled us out of the land, and said that in your exile, because you can't fulfill these mitzvot, and many of them carry the death penalty, I am going to extend to you a period of time that is grace and mercy. Shemot chapter 31 says that a person who does not honor the Sabbath is to be put to death. Oh my goodness. That means that all of us should be dead. But are you inhaling? Are you exhaling? Do you have faculties and ability to do? Yes, because the Most High knew that we were going to need grace, unmerited favor, and we were going to need mercy. So, now, we get down to verse number 8. That night they are to eat roasted in the fire. So now when he says roasted in the fire, guess what came to my mind? Guess what came to mind? What were the Hebrew people doing? They was having a barbecue. It wasn't roasted in the oven. They were having a barbecue. And that's one of the things that we are really good for. We are really good for it. Yes, indeed. Cookouts and barbecues. The only problem that we have today is we just barbecuing the wrong stuff. You know, we just barbecuing the wrong stuff because the Greeks gave us a text without explaining it. Eat everything that has been put before you because it has been sanctified by God. And I'm paraphrasing. There's another problem that exists. I got to stand up. I'm sorry. The problem that exists is that what you all don't know is that over 400,000 volumes of the writings of the Hebrew people were destroyed by the Greeks so that the Greeks' narrative could supplant it and be the narrative that you would go by. So they don't explain it. If the text is written to Hebrew people, then guess what Hebrew people know? Hebrew people know what's food and what is not food. I have a very dear person that is associated with me, and she gets headaches, real extreme headaches from eating pork. I know it's going to bother me, but I just got to have some ham. I says, don't you know that the Most High speaks against ham? Well, No, he said it was all right to eat it over here in the New Testament. I go, that's the wrong explanation and narrative. That narrative doesn't tell you that what you're eating is an abomination to the Most High. Doesn't tell you that. Don't explain it to you. I said, but the people that was being written to knew that that was not something that they should be ingesting into their system. Okay, let's move on. So, the mitzvot number 6, which is the obligation to roast and eat the Passover offering. Mitzvot number 7 is about the prohibition to eat the Passover offering partially roasted or boiled. So don't eat it raw or boiled, but roast it in fire. And then he gives us the instructions here. Let nothing remain till morning. So now mitzvot number 8 is about not leaving anything over. And the issue of not leaving anything over is germane to remembering the deliverance that the Most High has given us, but also to remember that at the time of our deliverance, we were made into free men, redeemed from slavery, and we were merited the status of royalty and grandeur. This is written in Exodus chapter 19. For you shall now be, if you follow my mitzvah, you shall be a kingdom, king with royalty. So now he gives us this royal grandeur state. But the idea also within royalty is that royalty, do you realize that royalty doesn't eat leftovers? Did you know that? Royalty doesn't eat leftovers. And the Most High is telling you and I, listen, this is royal food. You're not to eat it as a leftover. Secondly, there's another thing royalty doesn't do. Royalty doesn't pack up a care package. They don't pack up care packages and, well, I need to take this home to my relatives. No, the Most High expects us to function in the aspect of royalty. Here is how you are to eat it: with your belt fastened, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you are to eat it hurriedly. It is Yahweh's Pesach or Passover. For the night I will pass through the land of Mitzrayim, kill all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, both men, animals, and I will execute judgment against all the gods of Mitzrayim. I am Yahweh. The blood will serve as a sign marking the houses where you are. When I see the blood, I will pass Pesach, or I will pass over you, strike the land of Mitzrayim, the death blow, and will not strike you. So, with that being the case, all of the Hebrew people had to do what? They had to eat the meal where? In the house. If they had been caught outside, they would have died. So there's a requirement that the Pesach offering be eaten in the house. On when? On the 14th. Now, one of the other factors was, let's get to it. It is Yahweh's Pesach. Let's get down. This will be the day you will remember and celebrate as a festival to Yahweh. From generation to generation, you are to celebrate it by a perpetual regulation. So there's this perpetual regulation. What's the regulation? The regulation is about gathering the offering on the days or the time that it's supposed to be gathered, and the regulation is that you're going to slaughter it on the day that it is supposed to be slaughtered, and then you're going to eat it in the house. We're going to find that in Devarim chapter 19, or was it 16? I forget which one it is now. That the Most High is going to ask us once again to eat it in the place where it is slaughtered, the house. So now, what we're going to find in Devarim is that there are going to be this pilgrimage to the land and to around the temple where they're going to bring this animal for slaughtering. They're going to slaughter it. They're going to eat it in the house. Not their homes, but in the house. What's the house? The house happens to be the temple because the temple to Israel is also defined as the house. Now let me make something clear to you. We've argued the point about the aspect that follows. Well, let me go there. Davarim chapter, I'm going to get it here. Yeah, let me get it here so I can read it. Get it on my phone. Come on. Here we go. Hold on, folks. Hold up. Okay. Let me just go here. Let me see. Davarim chapter 16 and verse 16. In Davarim 16, there's a requirement. And it says, 3 times a year, all your men are to appear in the presence of Yahweh Eloheka in the place which he will choose. Once again, we're going to have this argument. In the place that he will choose. At the festival of Matzah. Well, the festival of Matzah happens to be the next day after the feast of Pesach. And at the festival of Matzah and the festival of Sukkot, you are to show up before Yahweh. You're not to show up empty-handed. So we had this debate going on about, well, how do we eat the Passover lamb in our homes on Passover and then make a pilgrimage and get to the place where the Most High has placed his name to celebrate the Feast of Matzah. It's simple now because Davarim lays it out for us. It says that the slaughtering and the eating of this Passover sacrifice, the lamb that is slaughtered is the sacrifice. That's what's offered. And it's offered to the Most High on the 14th. The next day happens to be the 15th, the Feast of Matzah. Guess where we are? We're in the temple area. We're in the area that we can make our trip to do what the Most High is asking us in chapter and verse number 16. That's the explanation of that. All right. Now, let's go on. Let's go down to verse number 15. Verse number 15 happens to be Mitzvot number 9. For 7 days, you are to eat matzah. On the first day, remove the leaven from your houses. For whoever eats hamatz, leavened bread, from the first to the 7th day is to be cut off from Israel. Now, I want to make something very clear to you. That statement there is very important. This is a mitzvah that is supposed to be carried out in your land wherever you are. Now, from the first day is not the 15th. The first day of leaven and having it removed happens to be the 14th. You and I cannot celebrate the Passover or the meal of the meat because the meat that is sacrificed, or that is a sacrificial offering to the Most High, must be eaten with matzah and marrow. Therefore, your home, now I want you to understand something, because you've heard it said that all I need to do is just move it out of my house into the garage. But that's not what Scripture says. Scripture says that it has to be removed from the domain and the area in which that you live. So that means your garage is attached to your house, is part of your property. You can't put it in your garage. You can't put it anywhere on your property. It has to be, can you say it with me? Out of there. It's got to go. Now, he says that anybody who eats it and has it will be cut off from Israel. That's a very important statement. Because being cut off from Israel and the nation of Israel, he's saying to you this: you will be cut off from the world to come, and you will not be resuscitated. You're done. Why? Why do you think matzah or leaven is so important to him? Well, it's simple. In the Proverbs writes a statement. It says, "These 7 things doth the Most High hate." And one of those 7 things in there is the haughty and a puffed up spirit. So leaven is attributed to being puffed up, and it is attributed to haughtiness. So what he wants us to do during the season, he wants us to remove and remember to remove all of the elements that contribute to haughtiness and a puffed up spirit. Pride. Thinking that we're more than we are. Elevating ourselves more than what we should. A humble and a contrite spirit, he says, is one that he will never turn his back on. So he wants his people to be in this humble state of existence. Therefore, for 7 days, our responsibility is to eat matzah. Why on the 15th day? Well, because the 15th day is the day in which Israel escaped Mitzrayim, and the Most High led them out with a mighty hand. Verse 17. You are to observe the festival of matzah. For on this day I brought your divisions out of the land of Mitzrayim. Therefore you are to observe this day from generation to generation by a perpetual regulation. Now, if you want to know how I got to Sabbath, if anybody, you want to know how I got to Sabbath when I was in 2000, early 2007, when I was still a Christian church and pastor, it's reading that word, those words right there, a perpetual regulation. What? How? Now, I want you to think about this. Think about this. If the Greek narrative says that it's been done away with, I want to know, how do you do away with perpetual? Is perpetual within the same narrative as permanent? And you all have heard me talk about this before. When perma-press pants and shirts came out, you know what you couldn't remove? You could not change the crease. I don't care how many times you washed it. I don't care how much starch you put in it. I don't care how much heat you put in it. When you got through ironing it, that crease was still there. And guess what you weren't going to do? You couldn't iron a new one in. So when the Most High says something is perpetual, then it's permanent. So he says that whoever eats food with hamas in it is to be cut off from the community of Israel. Doesn't matter whether he is a foreigner or a citizen of the land. Eat nothing. This is mitzvot number, I've gone through a few. This is mitzvot number 12. Eat nothing with hamas in it. Wherever you live, eat matzah. Now, we're going to go down to verse number 40. The time of the people of Israel lived in Mitzrayim for 430 years. At the end of 430 years, to the day, all the divisions of Yahweh left the land of Mitzrayim. Let me say this to you. We are in exile. Guess who knows how long we're going to be here? The Most High. Guess what? We won't be here a day longer. We won't be here a second or a moment longer than the specified time that he has designated. I have heard a lot of my Hebrew brethren teach that, well, we've been in this American exile for over 400 years. It got nothing to do with it. Our exile does not compare back to the number because the Most High established a time frame for Israel to be in exile. When he exiled us out of the land, he did not give us a time frame. But he has promised us that I will bring you back from where you are at a designated time. And he's the one that knows the time. Yahweh said to Aharon, this is the regulation for the Passover lamb. No foreigner is to eat it. Now let's look and see who the foreigner is. This is Mitzvot number 13. The prohibition to serve Passover offering to a foreigner or an apostate Hebrew. Remember, it's not the matzah and it's not the bitter herbs and it's not all the condiments that go with it. It's the meat that is sacrificed, the lamb that is sacrificed. A foreigner cannot, or a person who is not Hebrew cannot participate. It is the same as remembrance of our deliverance. As I read, it is inappropriate to feed a person whose belief is indifferent to ours. The application, once again, is in the land, in the temple. No person who is not a proselyte of the Hebrew faith can partake in the feast of Pesach. Verse 45, neither a traveler nor a hired servant may eat it. Once again, the rule is the same as 13, but this is one who is in the process of converting to the Hebrew way. When you think about it, it's not fitting for one who does not have a complete faith in the Hebrew way, nor did he experience what our forefathers experienced to participate in this offering. So, therefore, neither the foreigner nor the traveler, verse 45, okay, that was it, hired servant, and verse number 46, which is a mitzvah number 15, is to eat it in the house. You are not to take any of the meat outside the house. You are not to break any of its bones. Now, this issue around is another mitzvah. It's mitzvah number 16. You're not to break any of its bones. The idea behind the aspect of breaking bones is that this is not something that royalty does. We are not, the Most High is saying, you are not a cruel, wicked people that would destroy something. So I don't want you to break its bones. It ain't got nothing to do with, and none of his bones shall be broken. That narrative over there has nothing to do with this. This has to do with eating the meat of the sacrificial offering and not scraping its bones and not breaking its bones. Remember, the Most High says you are royalty. And what I want you to do, I want you to act like royalty. So that's the provision that he's given us to understand. Verse 48, if a foreigner staying with you wants to observe Yahweh's Pesach, all his males must be circumcised. Now remember, what are we talking about? We're talking about the meat. The meat is the sacrificial offering. Nothing else is. Stern has given us an incomplete translation of this text. The original Hebrew text says, when a proselyte resides among you, he shall make the Pesach offering for Yahweh. Each of his males shall be circumcised, and then he may draw near to perform it, and he shall be like the native in the land, but no uncircumcised male may eat of it. This commandment is a prohibition from the uncircumcised male from eating the meat of the offering, but not the matzah or the bitter herbs. The Pesach offering is about the meat which is offered to the Most High. The mainline reason for this prohibition is that when our ancestors at the time of the Exodus entered into a covenant with the Most High, and only full members of the covenant may partake in the offering as it serves as remembrance of that covenant in Bereshit chapter 17:11, where it says, you are to be circumcised in your flesh and of your foreskin. This will be a sign of a covenant between me and you. So the offering, that's once again, the issue happens to be that this is directed to who? Directed to Israel, because Israel are the people with whom the Most High has made the covenant. If you want to participate in Passover, then you have to be a full-fledged proselyte of the Hebrew faith, Israel's God, and all of these. And the requirement is directed to the male. Chapter 13. Yahweh said, set aside from me all the firstborn. This is Mitzvot number 18. The underlying purpose is to recognize that what? Everything and all things belong to the Most High, and we as people have nothing in this world except the Most High allows it. Also, with the abdication of Reuben's right as the firstborn, Yahweh has claimed every firstborn male to be a Levium. This commandment is applicable everywhere that we reside. So the firstborn shall be given to him. Verse number 3, Moshe said to the people, remember this day on which that you left Egypt, the abode of slavery, because Yahweh, by the strength of his hand, brought you out of this place. Once again, he gives us the mitzvah of not to eat matzah. Hamas. This is mitzvah number 19. You are leaving today in the month of Aviv, when Yahweh brings you to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittite, the Emori, the Hivi, the Yebusite, which he swore to your ancestors to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey. You are to observe this ceremony in this month. For 7 days you are to eat matzah, and on the seventh day shall be a festival for Yahweh. Matzah is to be eaten throughout the 7 days. Neither hamatz nor leavening agents are to be seen with you throughout your territory. Now he's not just saying your house, but now he's saying your territory. This is mitzvot number 20. Now watch something here. I want you to think about what's being said here. Remember, Israel was a composite group. Let's put it this way. Let me put it this way. Let's say that this board represents the territory of Israel. So what he's saying, if this is the territory of Israel, what cannot be found in your territory that you live within this framework of this square? There cannot be any leaven in it. So that negates the fact of you putting it in your garage or putting it outside. Do you own the property? If you own the property, it's your territory. The Most High says, I don't want to see it even on your territory. So it's got to be moved. So one of the things that has to happen, class, we have until Nisan 14 at noon. By noon on the 14th, Hamatz 11 got to be out of our territories. Got to be gone. Now, I know that over the period of time of since 2007 when we started this, we haven't done this. And I'm glad that you have charged me with the course of let's teach this so we can see it, so we can understand it. Because the Most High says, if leaven is found in your territory and if you eat it, you will be. Don't even think about it. Now, you ask yourself a question, well, Rabbi, you said that we're living in a period of grace and mercy. Yes, we are. But the problem is, he's given us this mitzvah to fulfill in everywhere that we live. Now, there is, oh, let me see, how can I put this without getting into the Greek text? Okay, good. There are 4 offerings that are made in Torah. The kataz, the shalamim, the kataz, and the olah, the 4 offerings. Those 4 offerings that are presented for various situations. One has to do with the fact that I forgot or that it wasn't intentional. But after the fact that I forgot or that it wasn't intentional, there is none of these offerings can be offered for your intentional violation of what the Most High has said. You can't bring him an offering. Now, with Israel, these offerings are animal offerings. Well, Rabbi, we don't do animal sacrificing no more. No, but you sin, and you have to come to the Father with something, and you can't treat him like, oh, I'm just, it's like there's you're going to know how old I am, but that's okay. I lived through a period of time where what they put on a truck and some cars is called a governor. And the governor is a limiter that doesn't let you exceed certain miles per hour. But if you're stubborn, you can break the governor and break through and go faster. Now, you're doing that knowing that there is a limit. So the Most High says, I'm putting a limit on things, and the limit that I'm putting on them, I don't want you to break through, because if you do, it's intentional, and there's no offering that you can give me. So you say, Rabbi, where am I lost? Well, let's put it this way. Here's your next out, and this is the only out that you have, and you better come correct with it. Because if you don't come correct with it, he's not going to accept it. The writing says, a broken and a contrite spirit he will in no wise despise nor cast out. But guess what? He knows whether or not you're broken or not. And he knows whether or not you're truly repentant or not. And he knows whether or not you're going to do it again. So the issue is with these commandments that he's given us is to be, once we come to the knowledge of them, then we're obligated, even in this exile, to carry out those that we can carry out in this land. All right, so let's go on down here for a minute. Verse 9. Chapter 13. Moreover, I will serve you as a sign on your hand and as a reminder between your eyes, so that Yahweh's Torah may be on your lips, because with a strong hand Yahweh brought you out of Mitzrayim. Therefore, you are to observe this regulation at its appropriate time, year after year. Now, we're talking about Passover. So, class, Passover is not a floating period that's defined by the equinox. It happens every year on the 14th of Aviv and Nisan and Aviv. That's when it happens. Every year. There is specificity. It's based on lunar calendar. Therefore, you are to observe this regulation at its appropriate time. When Yahweh brings you into the land of the Canaanites and he swore to give you and your ancestors and gives you to you, you are to set apart for Yahweh everything that is first from the womb. Every firstborn male will belong to Yahweh. Every firstborn donkey you are to redeem with a lamb, but if you choose not to redeem it, you must break its neck. But from people, you are to redeem every firstborn. Now, your question probably is what? What's probably your question? What's a donkey got to do with it? What's a donkey got to do with a mitzvah? Well, let's see here. This is mitzvah number 22. The obligation to redeem the firstborn donkey with a lamb. The underlying purpose of this mitzvah is a reminder of the event connected with the fact that Mitzrayim, the Egyptians, are metaphorically linked to donkeys, and the redemption of the firstborn that comes from the womb and the ground. There is a reference in Ezekiel chapter 23, verse 20. I'm not going to go to it. You can go to it. But this law is applicable wherever you are. It's also connected with the aspect of the obligation to decapitate the firstborn donkey. In this case, the donkey is because of the death of the firstborn that's born in Mitzrayim. So the Most High says, because Mitzrayim has this affinity with donkeys, when it's born, I want you to redeem it with a lamb. If you choose not to do that, then you're going to have to decapitate it. Aren't you glad that you don't raise donkeys? Okay, where am I? Okay, all right. So that's the Torah portion of Bo. Now we're going to go into Bishlach, the portion of Beshlach. Let's see where we are here. Down to verse number 29, 1629. Yahweh said to Moshe, how long will you refuse to observe my mitzvot and teachings? Look, Yahweh has given you the Shabbat. This is why he's providing bread for 2 days. On the 6th day, each of you stay where you are. No one is to leave his place on the 7th day. So people rested on the 7th day. Let me take a little time and let me work through this, because you can get a misunderstanding of what the Most High is telling us here and what the applicability is of this particular mitzvah. You will say, well, I need to stay home. I don't need to go anywhere. I had a young man in our congregation when we were over on Stockton Boulevard who was faithful. He read this particular mitzvah. He said, Rabbi, I won't be coming to the Sabbath anymore. I says, why? He says, because I can't travel beyond outside the domain of my house. I go, that makes no sense. I says, that doesn't make any sense. I says, because the Sabbath is a place and a time for gathering, for teaching. So let's get an understanding of what's going on here. This is mitzvah number 24. The underlying purpose was written to accomplish the aspect of Israel not leaving their homes to seek manna on the Sabbath. Read the text. The text is about food. The text is about manna. The word place is directed to a limited boundary in this case of Israel, the place was the limits of the boundary of Israel in the wilderness. Now, let's go back and let me use my illustration. This right here, this board, this area of this board represents all of the boundary of Israel, and Israel is inside this boundary. The Most High has dropped manna all through the week, and on the sixth day, he's given them enough food here for them to have food so that they don't have to go anywhere else to get it. So what he's saying, I don't want you wandering outside these boundaries to go get food. That's what he's saying. So now, applicable for us, how does that apply to us? We live within the city. We live within a county that's part of a city. What the Most High is saying to you and I don't need you to go to Roseville or to Stockton or to Chico or to wherever the boundaries that constitute Sacramento County, outside those boundaries during my Shabbat to do what? Go get food. Had nothing to do with going to service. Now, I spent time in Detroit, Michigan, in a little community there. Now, I can't think of the name of the community that my friend lived in Detroit. But in the community that he lived, 2 blocks from his house was the temple where a lot of the Jews lived, because he lived in a community that was filled with a lot of Jews lived around him. And one of the things that you could see them doing on the Shabbat, which is indicative of this commandment, they had their black hats on, their black suits, their white shirts, their little curlies, and they walk like this. Because the mitzvot from the Talmud says that you're not supposed to go beyond the boundaries of so many, I forget the word, avos or whatever, and you're supposed to walk leisurely. Okay? But what the commandment is talking about is going outside the boundaries of your city limits to go and get food. Didn't say stay home. Home is within the boundaries. See, let me ask you a question, okay? So you take a trip, right? And you fly, or you drive, or you take a train, okay? When you hit the city limits, what do you say? I'm so glad I am home. You're not in your house yet, but you're in the territory of the city limits of where you live, which you also refer to as home. So I want to make that clear to understand so that people say, oh, I don't have to go to Sabbath on the Sunday. I'm supposed to stay home. That's not what the mitzvah is saying. Okay. Let's go on down. Yithro, chapter 18. 19. Okay, we're going to get into 20. Chapter 20 has a plethora of mitzvot. So let's begin. Chapter 20. The first mitzvot has to do with, and it's mitzvot number 25. I am Yahweh Eloheka. Anytime you see written in Scripture, I am Adonai, your God, in the Hebrew that translates to be, I am Yahweh Eloheka, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim to the abode of slavery. What's this mitzvot about? This mitzvot is the obligation to believe that Yahweh's existence, that his existence is him and nobody else. The underlying purpose is obvious. I brought you out. Mitzvot number 26 has to do with the prohibition to believe that there is any deity except Yahweh. Now, it's interesting to me as I saw this. You are to have no other gods before me. It is interesting to me how long it took me to realize what that verse was saying. I started teaching Torah in 2007. In 2016 or 17, I began to teach about this idea that there can be no other Elohim except the Most High. Prior to that time, I was giving authority and purpose to the Hebrew Yeshua HaMashiach until the light bulb came on, and one of the brethren in the congregation pushed me to the fact to say, Rabbi, when are you going to teach that there is only one Elohim and it's the Most High, and that other guy is not God? I had to come to the fore, remove all my inhibitions of whose feelings I was going to hurt and who was going to leave when I taught that. And congregation did empty. Once again, second time, the congregation emptied in 2007 when I turned from worship on Sunday to Sabbath. Congregation emptied. When I taught the doctrine that precludes the Greek God from being the Son of God, the congregation emptied. So the issue is, from the words that go with a movie, tell me the truth. Jack Nicholson said, you can't handle the truth. There are a lot of people who can't handle the truth. But this particular mitzvah says to us, I want you to know that you are not to have no other gods before me. You are not to make for yourselves carved image of any kind of representation of anything in the heaven above, the earth beneath, or the water below the shoreline. That's mitzvah number 27. And the purpose of this is to allow Israel to distance themselves from idolatry. You are not to bow down to them, to serve them, for I am Yahweh, and I am a jealous Elohim. So now, verse 5 is mitzvah number 28 and 29. The underlying purpose is to prevent the bowing down or worshiping of an entity that is an object of worship other than Yahweh. And this is enforceable anywhere that we live in this world. He wants us to not worship anything but him. I don't know how come that wasn't clear to me earlier. I just didn't see it. You are not to use lightly the name of Yahweh, verse 7, your Elohim, because Yahweh will not leave unpunished someone who uses his name lightly. Now, the aspect of using his name lightly is to speak his name frivolously. One of the things, and I understand why it is that the Ashkenazis and certain people have added the name Adonai and the name Hashem into the context and removed the Yod He Vav He from being spoken, because they understand the nature of the severity of frivolously using his name and speaking his name. Class, I want to tell you that our conversations about the Most High and about his name needs to be held in serious, severe words escaping me, reverence. You and I have lived in a world where that's not the case for guy number two. Okay? You're out there working on a piece of wood and you hit your finger. So one of two words are going to come out your mouth. One of two. Oh, Jesus Christ. And the other one is like, something else. But the name is not held in esteem. The name is not feared. The name JC has no reverence. But the Most High says to you and I, I'm giving you a commandment that I want you to hold my name in high esteem. Don't joke with it. Don't play with it. Don't mention it frivolously. When you talk about me and you use my name, then use it in the context that has it revered, as the prophet Yeshayahu says, I see him. He's exalted, and that spirit is high and lifted up. It is revered. Verse 8. Mitzvot number 31, the obligation to sanctify the Shabbat. The purpose is to recall the grandeur of the Sabbath day, and that we should establish it in our hearts, the belief in Yahweh's creation in the world. Remember the Shabbat to set it apart for Yah. Now, the Shabbat is the seventh day. It's not the first day of the week. The first day of the week is not holy to the Most High. He doesn't care. It's like your boss calling a meeting on a day, and you didn't show up. You show up the next day. Guess what? Your boss doesn't care. You weren't there. And here's the problem. In society, and a job, you probably, unless you work for the government, you probably going to get away with that maybe a couple times before you get fired. And what the government going to do, because I used to work for the government, I can talk good, but I'm going to call it the government. The government will let you do that. Then they're going to call you and say, look, how come you keep missing my meetings? And you say, well, I just didn't feel like coming. Okay. All right, Mr. Holman, I suggest that you don't miss any more meetings. And you need to know that if you're going to work for me in this company, this government, you need to come to my meetings. So we have another meeting next week, next month. Our boss calls that. I don't show up. He says, so, Mr. Holman, I told you need to show up. Okay? So now the next thing that's going to happen is if I'm a permanent employee, I'm going to get written up for an administrative action, going to be brought before me, and chances are I'm going to be out the door. Now, in government work, let me put it in proper context for you. When you get fired from a job, guess what you are? You are dead from that job. Guess what you can't do? You cannot go back to it. Why? Because your attitude and your record precedes you. So guess what? You can't come back begging for your job. And what the Most High says about his Sabbath, if you don't honor my Sabbath, you are dead. You're dead to me. In this exile, he gives us grace and mercy. If you were in the land, you would be dead. Dead is not breathing. So we ain't going to spiritualize that. But where we are right now, the fact that you all don't honor the Sabbath, you can count that as grace and mercy. He's allowing you to be able to do what you do. But once again, I'm going to give you the Fram commercial. You can pay me now, or you can pay me later, but this is going to come up again, and you're going to have to deal with it. You have 6 days to labor and do all your work. Now, what's the Sabbath about? Rest. The Mitzvot, number 32, the prohibition to perform work on the Sabbath. The underlying purpose is that we should be free from our affairs in honor to honor the Most High. Listen, what is work? Anything that causes you to exert energy and force and attention to something that is not him. You don't mean that you don't get up and you don't wash yourself and that ain't work. It's what you're supposed to do. Clean yourself. As a matter of fact, the Most High wants us to be clean. You know what? I have come to understand something very strategic about the Most High. The Most High don't like stink. You don't like stink. Every offering that he says, let it be a sweet smelling fragrance, an aroma that comes up to him. So work. No, you can't go outside and mow your lawn. That's work. No, you can't wash your car on the Shabbat. That's work. And they told me when we went to Sabbath, Pastor Holman, on the Saturday, and that's when I cut my grass. That's when I washed my car, getting ready for the weekend. And you telling me that I can't do that no more? I'm not. All my friends wash their car and cut their grass on the Sabbath, so I'm going to keep on. Okay, fine, no problem. You can pay me now. You can pay me later. But you're going to have to pay me. Now, Mitzvot number is in verse number 12. Mitzvot number 33, the obligation to honor one's mother and father. This particular mitzvot is very interesting. And it's interesting because the aspect becomes one, in a question that I was asked last night, which I'll mention to you. If you happen to have parents that have not been kind to you, am I supposed to honor them? Yes, you are. And one of the reasons is that the Most High has given us a vehicle that has brought you into this world. And what you make of yourself is part of your environment, part of your upbringing could be good, bad, but if through the vehicle of your parents you were not born, then you wouldn't be here. So they are part of your existence. They are also part of the fact that even if they were bad, they protected you and brought you through your infancy to where you could become who you are. And I want you to think about something. Maybe you wasn't such a good child. Maybe that's the reason why you got treated so bad. But in any respect, the idea of honoring your father and mother is the fact that you will care for them and that you will love for them. And you can say, well, they weren't there for me. I ain't got to be there for them. No, that's not what the Most High says. And he says it in another text, so that your days may be long in the land. So it's attached to you to do due diligence in taking care of the ones who have made your existence what it is. And you may have grown up to be a very prosperous person. But if they had not brought you into this world, you would not be who you are. Therefore, honor them. Mitzvah number 33. Now, mitzvah number in verse 13, 14, 15, and 16, that verse should be written as one verse, and within it, these particular mitzvot should be. Verse 13, do not murder. Do not murder sounds quite obvious, right? Well, its underline is that Yahweh built this world, commanded it to be populated and settled, and he prohibited us from destroying it through actions of our own hands by killing or otherwise eliminating people. Because that is people who inhabit the world. Murder also encompasses mitzvah number 37, that is bearing false witness against your fellow man. Now, murder is also connected with verse 16, which is mitzvah number 37, the prohibition of falsely testifying. It is that falsehood, oh, come on back to me. I'm jumping down, but I'm going to tie these two together. It is a falsehood is inherently repugnant and undesirable in the eyes of every intelligent person. Submitting false witness is a cause for the destruction of our society. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 16 says, if a malicious witness comes forward, gives false testimony against someone, then both the men involved in the controversy are to stand before Yahweh, before the Kohanim and the judges in the office at that time. The judges are to investigate carefully if they find that the witness is lying and has given false testimony against his brother. You are to do to him what he intended to do to his brother. In this way, you will put an end to such wickedness among you. Those who remain will hear about it, be afraid, and no longer commit such wickedness. Show no pity. Life for life, an eye for eye, and a tooth for tooth, and a hand for a hand, and a foot for a foot, for an individual who gives false testimony. Adultery. Mitzvah number 35. The underlying purpose, you are not to commit adultery, is a commandment not to cohabit with the wife of another man. So this mitzvot is more directed to a man than it is a woman. Although in our society, women coerce men, whatever, to cohabit with them. But now let's remember something. The aspect of cohabitation in the mind of the Most High is for the purpose of procreation. The mitzvot is mostly directed toward the man because it deals with procreation. Also, there are many detriments that result from adultery. It can cause for negation of numerous mitzvot that Yahweh has placed upon us. One is that he has commanded us to honor our parents, but with adultery, it can be possible that a person might not know their parents. Another in which comes to play is that by not knowing your family, you might unknowingly cohabit with your sister. So there are reasons for these mitzvot of adultery. Those are just some of them. Now, this one here, verse 15, do not steal, is an interesting one, because while it is that you read it within the narrative that it is placed, it has a much greater importance because it's not talking about a monetary thing or stealing things. That's dealt with in Vayikra and Mitzvot 2:24, Leviticus 19:11. This one here is about kidnapping. It's about stealing a person. And the penalty, and the reason why we know that it falls within that category, because these mitzvot, murder, adultery, theft, are all mitzvot that carry the death penalty. You can, adultery gets carried what? With what? Stoning. Murder gets done with the same thing. So the idea here in this particular verse of our text, do not steal, is in the context of kidnapping, because what you do, what? If I go steal you or kidnap you from your family, now here it comes to play. I kidnap you and I do something else which is forbidden. I sell you, okay? Which is the reason why a lot of kidnapping happens. It happens for the issue of a monetary gain. A lot of young people young ladies particularly, are being kidnapped and sold into that other business. The Most High says, if you do that, you're going to die. I will kill you. We've already dealt with the false witness. Now, verse 17. Do not covet your neighbor's house. Do not covet your neighbor's wife, his male, his female slave, his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Why do you think that's there? Well, the underlying purpose is mentioned in Deuteronomy chapter 5 and verse 18, which is mitzvot number 416. Let's see what it says. Do not covet your neighbor's wife. Do not covet your neighbor's house, his field, his male, his female, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. The reason being is that coveting can be very detrimental to your mind. You know that? Why is that? Because you get fixated on something that belongs to somebody else. And if your mind gets fixated on something that belongs to somebody else, what you're going to do is you're going to meditate on it. meditation on it is going to take your mind to a place that's bad. Because the next thing you're going to do is you're going to start meditating and figuring out how you can get it. Her, it, him, whatever. You're going to figure out how to violate the other mitzvot, thou shalt not steal, in Vayikra. Because now you're going to be trying to figure out and laying awake and trying to figure out, how can I get that man's wife? How? Oh, I saw, she sure has on a pretty ring. There was an incident just this week that was reported where this older gentleman was in his home. Did you see the news on that? Where this lady came into his home and he was incapacitated. He couldn't defend himself. And she wrestled that ring off his finger. She walks out of the house, the car's out there, and she goes. She stole the man's ring. You see, coveting something takes us to a dark place. So the Most High has given us a commandment to tell us, I don't want you to fixate yourself, your mind, on anything that belongs to anybody else. This type of thought is evil. It causes us to fall into too many pitfalls. Let me see, Davarim chapter, oh, I read that already. So that's why that particular mitzvah is there. Let's go down to verse number 19. Yahweh said to Moshe, here is what you are to say to the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen that I spoke to you from heaven. You are not to make with me gods of silver, nor are you to make gods of gold for yourself. Once again, that's a pretty simple one to deduce and understand. It's mitzvah number 39. And its purpose is so that we can distance ourselves from idolatry. Let's go to verse number 24. For me, you need to make only an altar of earth. On it you will sacrifice your burnt offerings, peace offerings, sheep, goats, and cattle. In every place where I cause my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. If you do make me an altar of stone, you are not to build it of cut stones, for if you use a tool on it, you profane it. And why is that? It's to establish in our souls an awareness from the day that an altar is built, that as a consequence of the altar, it is through the sacrifices that are offered on it by which we shall receive atonement for our sins. This mitzvah is to be carried out in the land where there is a temple. So we understand that there's reasoning behind it, understand what the purpose of it is. It's not to be cut. You are not to use steps to go up to my altar so that you will not be indecently covered. Now we recognize that the priest or the Kohanim wore linen objects or linen pants so they weren't exposed. But what the Most High was saying to them, I don't even want the thought of you and even your undergarments to be exposed when you approach my altar. So make sure that the going up to it is one where you can be decent. So I think that's, I closed it. I forget what number that was. 41. Okay, so we're down through mitzvah number 41 of our 613. I was going to continue to teach these on Friday evening, but I think I'm going to bring them into this venue where I teach them because there's a greater audience to be able to receive them, and I'm somehow not able to get them up to SoundCloud. So I want you to know how important these are. There are mitzvos that are prohibitive, and there are positive mitzvos. All of them are connected to us. Now you say, well, Rabbi, you read some today that we can't. No, you can't do. They're directed for times when we are in the land that we'll have to carry those out. But the knowledge of them is very important. As I close today, I want to share this thought with you. You might be saying, well, why? What's the significance of us going through all of this? Well, here's the deal. You and I are going to pass from life to death. How we leave this world in our mind, of course, you never thought about this, and you're probably thinking, well, where did you get this from? Well, it's because the Most High has promised us that in Daniel chapter 12, verse 4, I think it is, he talks about the revivification from the dust. So as you go to sleep with your mind focused on whatever, your revivification is going to pick you up right where you left off. You say, how do you know that? Well, logic tells me that there's something special, that the Most High wouldn't give us something in exile to do that doesn't have a long-range effect on something that he's planning in the future. The thing that you and I have never heard of until now is a 8th day. The 8th day is the world to come, not the 7th day. The 7th day is the day of preparation to get you to the 8th day. We're going to have to go through the 7th day, which is the millennial era and the messianic era. We're going to have to go through that period of time to focus our minds and focus our attention to the understanding of the mitzvos. Let me put it this way. One of the things that we like to do when we meet somebody that we're going to marry comes from a song. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you. Getting to know you, getting to know all of these things. So we have this courtship of getting to know people. And what the Most High is saying to us, to Israel, I've exiled you out of the land, but I'm going to bring you back to the land. And when I bring you back to the land, we're going to get to know each other in the words of one of the whining songs, going to know you in a better way. I'm going to know you according to the teachings that I'm giving you. And if you can't wrap your mind around the teachings that I'm giving you because you're my wife, guess what ain't going to happen? There's not going to be a honeymoon. And the honeymoon happens to be the 8th day. Nobody in your Christian church is going to teach you about an 8th day. The 8th day is the day of new beginnings. The 7th day is the day of preparation and getting ready for that process. So, when you and I leave this earth, right now, if I were to expire today, my mind, the consciousness of my soul, of who I am, is imbued with the knowledge of the Most High and is imbued with the knowledge that I have at this point in time concerning Torah. When I am resurrected from the dust, that same mind is going to resurrect with me. I will have one-ups on those that don't have it. I will not be in contention with the teachings that he is going to be providing to us in the 7th day. I don't want to be in contention. Y'all follow what I'm saying? I don't want to be in contention. The reason I don't want to be in contention in the seventh day is because Zechariah has said that I am going to bring 2/3 through the fire. And only 1/3, I'm going to take 1/3 through the fire. That 1/3 is going into the 8th day, which means that of the multiplicity of Israel that's going to be brought back to the land, 2/3 are going to be done away with. And why are they going to be done away with? Because they couldn't wrap their mind around the covenant that the Most High is making with his wife. It's like this, class. It's like coming to the altar and the officiant starts giving out the vows. And somebody says, wait a minute. You've seen those movies, right? I'm sure they've happened in real life. Wait a minute. I'm not sure I want to do this. Well, why aren't you sure you want to do this? Because I'm not sure that you're the right person that I want to marry. You mean to tell me we had to come all this way? Yeah. So what the Most High said, I'm going to bring you to the 7th day, and we're going to get all of that cleared up, because there's going to be a marriage on the 8th day in which I'm going to take my wife into eternal life. Class, hear me, okay? Those of you that are watching by stream, okay? Not heaven. Nothing in the scriptures talk about Israel going to heaven. The dissertation is all about land. Where's that land? The same land that he created us from. The same land that he created us from is the land that we're going back to. And that same land is the same land that if we make it into the 8th day, we will reside with him there forever. You might want to think about it. Well, I've had a good time sharing with you today. I hope that I haven't bored you. The mitzvos, let me see. I don't know if you can preach the mitzvos. I just don't know if you can do that. They have to be taught. And so I've tried to share with you their meaning. So I pray that you've gotten something out of today. Yerekaka Yahweh V'yishmeraka, Ya'er Yahweh Panai B'Leka B'Yanuka, Yasa Yahweh Panai B'Leka B'Yasham L'Kashalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine on you and show you his favor. May Yahweh lift up his face toward you and give you shalom until we meet again. May the peace of Yah be with you.